Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about how the collective ego uses machiavellianism to fight empathy in our society. Let's first step back for a second. I started this channel about a year ago because I went through a lot of things trying to climb the ladder of society in my specific field, and I realized I encountered a lot of obstacles during my life, and I was so mad that I started this channel trying to tell people what I had discovered and how Machiavellianism works in the workplace and in our society in general, to not allow people that actually want to do good things in the world to move forward. Unfortunately, this didn't change, of course. This is how the world is built since forever. But since then, since I started my channel, my view of the world definitely improved a lot, even more, even further. And even my reaction to it changed because thanks to Eckhart Tolle and his books, I actually went through my own awakenings. I have a different view of the world, so I want to start teaching you all how to deal with the world and how to improve it, how to not fall in the traps that collective ego plays there for us. So first of all, today we're going to talk about the game that this collective ego designed for us. I spoke in my previous videos about this game, and if I look back, they sounded a bit confusing because I was trying to say things without saying things in a certain sense. Like I was afraid of what could have happened if someone had seen my videos and understood that I had understood everything, because this is really a world made of sharks and it's very cruel. And now I really don't care anymore. And so at this point, I just want to be honest with you and tell you everything I know without saying names, about how this thing works and why you should try to change it, and why and how you're being tricked to take part into this game that is not for you. It's not a game designed for you to win it, for you to actually enjoy it. It's just a game designed to keep you trapped until you become old and you can't do anything anymore, and the cycle repeats itself to use everybody in the same exact way. And there are so many strategies that the narcissists and the collective ego they are victim of actually uses to all these strategies to keep us stuck and to force us or to convince us to willingly take part into this game. First of all, I want to talk about this game that the collective ego designs for us to keep participating and for us to keep ruining the world and wasting our lives in the service of the ego, really. First of all, let's talk about the ego. What is the ego? It has a lot of different definitions, in fact, that not always overlap, or definitions in the sense that people use the word ego in different ways. It's a concept that is being first described by Sigmund Freud, and is basically this mind concept, the image of ourselves that has to mediate between our instincts and what the world wants from us, basically. This why has been evolved. It's been evolved initially to be able to live in a tribe. Why? Because human beings were initially more like animals. A lot of their behaviors were mostly driven by their instincts or survival, and so also prevarication against other people. And so in the life of a tribe, that is not okay, because you need for the tribe to actually be a good way, a better way of surviving. The tribe also has to have rules and has to have expectations for the individuals that are part of the tribe, for them to take part in the tribe and live a better life altogether and have a better better chances of surviving as a group instead of a single individual. But people that had this capability, this ego capability of mediating between, yes, I want to survive, I need this thing to survive, and okay, if I do this to obtain what I need, people are going to look bad at me and are going to kick me out of the tribe. So people that were capable of mediating between these things, between I need that and this is what I can and cannot do to obtain it, initially had an advantage. This means that people started becoming deceiving in the sense that they started building this image of themselves that did not actually correspond to their real selves, to their real instincts, but was just an image that they were using to show people in the tribe for them to continue being part of it. And so this is how the ego evolved. Unfortunately, what happened is that after a while, of course, people that were capable of deceiving others also started becoming leaders, because at that point there were people that were very afraid and people that were very aggressive, and all those people in some way were put together by people with an ego. So narcissistic people started becoming leaders in the world during evolution. At that point, though, another thing came up, which is Machiavellism. Because why? Because yes, you can deceive people, but up to a point. So for you to actually be able to deceive people for a long time and to do it with a strategy that allows you to truly aim at your goal and not being understood by others, you have to become more strategic, which means you have to become more Machiavellian, it's called in psychology. When you put up strategies, that you have a hidden agenda to realize your strategies, and you don't tell people that you're using them for your own advantage. And so those leaders started becoming the elites that we have still now in the world. So the elites are nothing else than narcissists that raise to the top through deception throughout history. And thanks to their Machiavellism, they were able to maintain the system in a way that we don't realize what they're doing. This is the world we live in today. This is everything you see today is based on this very simple concept, the fact that leaders and elites are in fact narcissistic. Of course, once you become for a long time an elite within your group, empathetic and non-narcissistic people are also born and raised. And so we today have elites that are not all the time narcissistic. And so they also have a different sort of way of leading the world, but still they are much fewer as compared to the narcissistic ones, although we are evolving in that sense. So this simple principle drove our whole history. And the fact that the masses are always so much kept ignorant in a certain way, ignorant not in the sense of lack of education always, but lack of education in terms of the mechanisms that the elites use to govern and rule the world. Not always for good. Most of the times it's actually just to maintain their own survival, to perpetuate their own tribe, which is the elites, at the expenses of the masses. And so I know this sounds like a real communistic perspective. I never even read Karl Marx, so I don't know. Maybe this is the same thing he's saying. It's just my own logic suggesting me this stuff. So point is that this is the world we live in, and this is how everywhere the world works this way. And after a while now we have not single individuals trying to perpetuate themselves. We have the collectiveness of these individuals that create a collective ego. What they don't understand is that they are victims of their own ego as well. And so the ego, which has been initially evolved for the survival of our genes, not ourselves, we're talking about our genes only, it's now going against them and against us and against everybody. So we need to awaken from the ego to stop doing what we're doing, which the wars we see every day happening in the world are just the symptom of the poisonous effects that the ego has on the human mind and human beings in general. And unfortunately, the point is that we are the ones perpetuating this system because we are the ones not knowing it and participating in the game that the collective ego created. What is this game? This game is nothing else than the society we live in the end, which is made of several different players and several different chess pieces that are used by the collective ego, by the companies, by the governments, by society, to keep us in this matrix we have to awaken from. Strategy number one: peer pressure. Peer pressure is a very powerful strategy to control the masses in a very passive aggressive way, because in the end, if it's your peers pressuring you, pushing you to do something, it's not the government, it's not the company, it's not anyone else but your own surroundings, right? So you feel the need of doing whatever your surroundings wants you to do, or you have to do it because otherwise you're just kicked out of whatever place you are in, whatever tribe you're in. However, the tribe itself is oftentimes, we're talking about the masses, so it's always manipulated, brainwashed by the collective ego for them to peer pressure everybody else in order for them to do what the ego needs, not what they actually need. This all starts because we are unaware, because we have a life cycle, because we are born and then we grow up and we have to figure out the world, and nobody actually has figured that out yet. And so we all have a life cycle. We all go through the same type of increase in awareness, and when we finally reach the point of the peak of awareness, oftentimes we are too old, and at that point we already have been put aside by society, and so society keeps going on. And this is another form of manipulation that is used by the collective ego to keep us stuck. The other manipulation is exactly this: the shift between victims and the life cycle of the victims. So the second manipulation has, I will call it the life cycle shift. So this manipulation is basically not even a manipulation, in the sense that it's just how it works. So imagine you are in a company, and you are hired, and then initially you have this honeymoon phase where everything is perfect, and after a while you realize that every time you request a promotion you never have it. Every time they promise you something, they don't actually give it to you, and so you start being disappointed. Be like, you promised me this. When I got in, it was everything was perfect, but now it is not working how you promised. But at that point, you are not even necessary anymore, because someone else can be hired on your behalf. And so what happens is that your life cycle made it difficult for you to fight this phenomenon, because once you finally get awakened and you finally realize that they can just say, okay, leave. If you don't like here, leave. And then you leave and someone else is hired, and they're gonna just smear campaign you, or say, it wasn't a good employee, and please come here and fix whatever he did. And so this person is gonna be ego fed again, as you have been at the beginning, thinking it's gonna be perfect. And the same life cycle repeats itself forever, because we give birth to people all the time, every day, continuously. And so there is always a new human ready to be used by the system, because every new human is unaware, and every old human that is now aware, it's not necessary anymore. It's actually doesn't have the strength or the money or the power to do anything at this point. And so this life cycle is used by the collective ego to perpetuate itself. Third type of manipulation, which is very similar to this, is the trophy scapegoat manipulation. This is a very spread manipulation in every field. We all are victims of it in different ways, and in our families, in society, in everything. So the scapegoat manipulation is actually extremely interesting. So the trophy scapegoat manipulation is basically when two people are used alternatively as trophy and a scapegoat by a manipulator and an abuser. This happens a lot in relationships with narcissistic people, but whatever narcissistic people do in relationships is in the end just a strategy of the ego. So it's used in everything where the ego belongs. So collective ego has the same exact strategy, just in a bigger scale than the individual ego. And so it's all, you can see that it all repeats itself. And this is why narcissists are just victims of their ego in the end, because they're like insects that can only repeat whatever their ego make them do. They can't get out of their own matrix. So the scapegoat trophy manipulation starts like this. One person, let's take the example of the employees before. One person is initially treated like a trophy. You're amazing, it's ego-fed, you're special, you're the new employee, you're gonna be amazing in this role and you're gonna be successful. After a while, a second employee comes in and that person is initially put aside, like, yeah, or maybe is already there, is already an employee, already present, is a previous employee, let's say another employee. That person is initially put aside and made to live in the shadow of the trophy. Like, you see how this person is amazing, you should be like them. This kind of abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, when people are compared to others and told they're not enough, they have to aim to become that way. That is called being scapegoated, and nothing they do is right. It's always wrong. They're never good. They're never good enough. That person is the scapegoat. What happens is that the trophy is just being ego fed for the trophy to do whatever the company in this case wants to do, but is not actually, nothing is done for his own well-being and his own interest. And so after a while the trophy realizes what is going on and gets disappointed that all the things is being promised are not working out. And so at this point the scapegoat comes in the game, because at this point the abuser takes the scapegoat and put it on the pedestal where the trophy first was, and put the trophy where in the scapegoat position. So at this point the places, the positions are switched, and the scapegoat finally feels so happy that it's finally being put on the pedestal, that whatever the trophy tries to say to try to awaken the scapegoat from the reality, which is that things are never going to go how they actually will promise to you, because it's always the same story. This scapegoat will never awaken from that dream, because he's having what it was aiming to, although it doesn't know that what he was aiming to, it was actually abuse. And so this is another type of manipulation that is continuously used in our society to make us aim to things that we shouldn't actually try to achieve, because they're just abuse, by putting people on pedestals, making them become trophies in a way that we try to become that way, but in the end they're actually having a miserable life. This happens a lot with VIPs, with famous actors, famous people. We've seen it recently in the Oscars with Will Smith. All the people there were pretty much on PTSD for whatever happened, but everybody had to laugh and pretend nothing happened. That is the type of matrix we're talking about. The fact that people have to constantly, in everything, in TV, in movies, in everything that is public, they have to pretend. They're being put there by the collective ego as trophies so that we try to become like them. But in the end, they have a miserable life. And you can go and listen to anyone that is actually saying the truth, and you will see that they all say the same thing, that they are famous, they are their peak in their career, but in the end their life is miserable. And this is true. It's not about money. It's about having to pretend you're happy because you're used as a trophy. You feel the need of, fulfilling that happiness, that appearance of happiness, because you feel like that's what people expect once they get there. And once you get there too, you're like, I'm supposed to be happy. Let's pretend, because I'm not. Because you feel ashamed for trying so much to reach something, if then it doesn't even make you happy. So it's even difficult for trophies to explain to people, to tell people how bad it is to be in their spot. But today we're having a lot of people that are explaining how things are not how they look. They are different, and they're trying to make people awaken from this. And once for all, for example, it's been Britney Spears that initially felt she had to say she loved her life because she had to say it, and then she had to give a speech in court saying that the conservatory was being abusive, that she had to say, yes, I'm sorry, I lied before. I lied, I said I was okay, but I'm not. The conservatory is abusive. And this is what I'm talking about. People that get there are forced by the collective ego to pretend they're happy, but they're not. Nobody is. It's impossible because the collective ego can only abuse people, can only use people for its own advantage. We are fighting against a monster that has been created by evolution thousands of years ago, and then at this point is a machine that is just running and is using all of us for its own survival, especially narcissistic people, which are the main victims of the collective ego, because they have a personality disorder. For how their brain is wired, it really becomes difficult for them to awaken because it has to do with atrophic parts of their brain, like prefrontal cortex, like the third eye, like all the areas where consciousness resides, that are instead very developed in people that awaken, are completely atrophied in people with narcissistic personality disorder. So those people are just the main proxies of the collective ego. And this is why we have to awaken, because otherwise the collective ego will just use everybody to perpetuate itself. I hope you enjoyed these videos, and I will continue talking about all the manipulations that the collective ego uses in the next video.